Hey there YouTube, welcome back. This is the Allegheny Northern in N-Scale, and you just watched the startup sequence for the relatively new ScaleTrains C39-8. And I have two here, obviously. One is Conrail, and this is a unit that features the ditch lights. We'll take a look at that here in a moment. And the other one is a Norfolk Southern, and it has, you'll notice the unique feature there is some yellow snowplows on either side. And if you purchased or were thinking about purchasing one of these locomotives, the first thing I gotta tell you about it is NS was known to run these long hood forward. So when you take this thing out of the box and you start it up for the first time, and it looks like it's running backwards, they have actually set the decoder already so that the forward direction for the NS unit, at least on the model that I purchased, was set for the long hood forward as being the forward direction. So if you go to put it in a consist like I did and didn't know it was going to do that right out of the box, you will be surprised when one locomotive is fighting the other one. But NS does run the long hood forward, and I had to Google it to make sure that that was correct, and I didn't get something funky from ScaleTrains, but they did not disappoint. One of those fine attention to detail moments that we come to expect from ScaleTrains. So let's go ahead and take a look at the models. And then not only do I want to do that, but there has been a lot of conversation on the channel about detail and which locomotives to purchase, especially for those of you who are just starting out. So I want to take some time not only to review the details of this model, but also to show you how it compares to some other manufacturers, so you can kind of get an idea of the difference that you're getting when you make your purchase. Okay, so for those of you who want to nerd out on the locomotive a little bit, the 3,600 horsepower GE C39-8 locomotives started in 1984, and largely by 2008 were phased out of service, particularly with NS. And although the locomotives were a big hit with Class 1 railroads, there's just better technology out there with newer locomotives, and these got replaced. So by 2008, these got relegated to smaller sub 2 and 3 class railroads, and I guess they also shipped them down into South America as well. And in addition to that, the Dash 8 series was good for GE. It is the locomotive that basically put them on the map and forever sealed their fate, so to speak, or their market share, I guess, against EMD. And you can find all of this information on these locomotives if you go ahead and just type it into Google. You can find it on a handful of sites that pretty much say the same thing. So that is the locomotive on the prototype. If you are one of those modelers who's got to have what is in vogue right now, what is on the railroads right now, these are gonna slide right past you because they're kind of old. But if you are a modeler like me and you just like cool locomotives, then this locomotive is perfect for your railroad. And ScaleTrains is offering it in a couple of different variants, so you can go ahead online and find it with those options. Retail price of the locomotive is somewhere in the neighborhood of $250. So if you go with the DCC and sound variants, that's what you can expect to pay. So let's go ahead and take a look at each of the features on the model. And at the end here, we'll do a run, obviously, and then I'll show you them compared to some other brands' recent releases. Let's go right in here and start off with the Pilot. We're looking at the NS model, and other than the yellow snowplow that I mentioned earlier, you see that we have the full array of separately applied MU and control hoses and cables. And obviously the MU unit cable is in the dummy position, we'll call it. And When we come up here on the short hood, we see the separately applied grabs, very crisp detail on the printing. And I don't know how well I'm going to be able to focus on some of the smaller printing, but not very well, I guess, is the answer. However, it is legible. And I'm going to take you down here and look at the truck detail. And it is truly remarkable how much detail they get into these N-scaled trucks. All of the separately applied recorder cables, sanding, nozzles, brake details, it's all there. And as we come up here, we see the cadre of warning stickers along the hood and all of the fan details. The copper contact is prominent on this model, but you're going to be hard pressed to find one where it's not. And then when we come back to the rear of the model, similar details on the pilot with the cut levers, MU hoses, couplers, separately applied grabs, crisp details. And then we're just going to go ahead down here along the roof, and I'll show you all of those details. This model is equipped with the LokSound sound decoder. It is a V5. I don't know that anyone's putting anything else in their models right now. If you get a modern new release, you should be getting it with the V5. And let's take a look at the details here on the pilot of the Conrail. So, no snowplow on here, but you do notice. I'm trying to get the focus right there. There we go. Look at that. The knuckle. Got your cut lines, your cut levers, and once again, very finely printed detail that you could read if my phone could focus on it, but it can't, so you can't. But trust me, it is there. Very fine detail, crisp printing on the Conrail version, just as there is on the NS. Let me zoom in here, show you the chain details and the shock absorber details. There is your front pilot. Now this Conrail that I got does have the ditch lights. It is one of the only models that has the ditch lights. So when you look, there are multiple Conrail units out, but there's only one or two that actually has the ditch lights, which was a later feature. So definitely check that out if that's something that interests you. But the details here as we go down are very much the same. Okay, so because we just took a nice close look at the new ScaleTrains offerings, what I want to do is show you some other models and show you how their detail level compares. Now, I'm going to span several manufacturers across several different generations, so it's going to be a little bit different, and you got to understand that when you're looking at this, you're looking at locomotives that may not be recent releases. So I'm just giving you an idea of what's out there, and they're not all the same locomotive, so it's a little unfair because I'm not comparing the same model all the way across, but you're going to get the idea, okay? So this is an Athearn, and I just want to show you like the pilot details that you're going to get. And you know, it's not a bad locomotive. It runs just fine. It pulls fine. But it's not, the details aren't as crisp, I will tell you. This is an old model. It is probably, I want to say it's going on probably 10 or 15 years now, maybe. So it's a little bit old, but you can see that the railings are a little bit bulkier. Just, you know, showing you that there's the thin rails right there. You know, these railings are a little bit bulkier, and the detail is not separately applied. You know, it's there, but it's molded on. And the pilot details, not beautiful. But once again, this was a DC model that I converted to DCC with a non-sound drop-in Digitrax decoder. Okay, next is Broadway Limited, which everybody seems to have mixed opinions on. Some people love them, some people hate them. I currently am sort of in a hate relationship with Broadway Limited, but this locomotive in particular I do like very much, and it operates just fine. And the detail on it is good. One of the main complaints that I've heard and seen online about this model is how high it sits. And honestly, I don't think it's all that terrible. The pilot does sit a little bit high in the front, but they do a pretty decent job of hiding it along the side. And when you look at the real model, it also has a little bit of a high sit, so not terrible, but you do get your separately applied details, good array of details, air conditionings and stuff like that on the roof, and you do get the hoses. So this is not a bad model, and for the price, depending on what where you find it, reasonably priced for sound and DCC. So this particular model I can recommend from Broadway Limited. The SD40-2s, at least the first release, not so much. Then we'll take you over here. This is the Atlas. This is the Dash 8 that came out for Amtrak and the Pepsi scheme. And as you recall, the detail on it was pretty good. It matched a similar shell for a much older model, but this one came with sound. These all have sound in them so far. The Broadway Limited does their own thing. Everything else is running with a LokSound V5 decoder, but you are getting some separately applied details here. And out of all of the locomotives, this is probably the least expensive right now. You'll pay around $180 to $190 for this Atlas Gold Series Masterline model. You'll pay somewhere around $220, $200-ish for this model. Obviously, I've already told you that those are somewhere in the $250 neighborhood. And this one, if you can find it, I think I paid probably $60 or $80 for it, plus a $30 decoder. Once again, not sound equipped, so if you add sound, it's a little bit different. But that's obviously the least expensive. Then we come down here. Here is the offering from Bachmann. This is the budget version sound that they have. It is an SD45, I believe. And, cut levers, MU hoses, some of it's molded on, some of it's separate. Truck detail is about average. But this I found at a train show, DCC equipped with sound for $120. So if you are thinking about doing DCC and sound and you don't want to spend $250 out of the gate, this is not a bad model to start with. You get some pretty good details. A lot of it, yes, is still molded in. But you know what? It's not a bad model. It's a good little workhorse, so you can see what you get at that price point. Now let me take you over here to an Intermountain. This one also started off as a DC model that was converted to DCC with a Digitrax drop-in. And if you look at it, it's truck detail's okay, right? You got the wheels are kind of bulky and don't mind the static grass, but there are some separately applied details. And so I think when this thing came out, I probably picked it up at a train show somewhere around maybe $100, I'm guessing. I can't remember exactly, but that's about what they were going for. And then I think I threw in the $30 decoder, and here we go. So, once again, the SD40-2 is a favorite of mine. I like this locomotive. I would do some upgrading to it when I get the time. There's just it could use a little bit of loving as far as some of the details go, but it's a good locomotive, and it runs great. Now, this is probably the least detailed of the models that I'm going to show you. This is the Kato SD40-2 Kato, if you're more refined, but Kato nonetheless. And they have the typical separately applied MU hoses in the front, the brake hoses in the front, but everything else is molded in place. This version I don't believe is available anymore. I don't know if they're re-releasing them or anything, but you get a little bit more of a bulky look to it. However, these locomotives have never let me down. I'll never bash Kato. They put out some great stuff. These things pull like you won't believe. They're probably some of the best pulling locomotives that I have in my fleet. Yes, they need a little bit of detail added to them, but for your dollar, if you're just getting started and you want a good, reliable locomotive that looks halfway decent, this is a great place to start. So just because we've, talked about this in some of my other videos, and I've been getting so many comments about, great locomotives to start with and what should you start with, I wanted to show you kind of the price points that you're getting here. So, a locomotive like this was a regular DC locomotive that I converted. I know that I paid around $65, I think, for this at a train show in DC. And then, of course, I upgraded it with the decoder. Once again, that's about a $30 decoder. So I'm under $100. I've got a great running locomotive, no sound. But, if you wanted to do sound, you could do it. These were all DCC ready. If they weren't already equipped with it. So I didn't have to get real creative with getting the decoder in there. If you go with some older models, it's a little bit more tricky. But for the standard, out of the gate, ready to run, this is kind of, where you're at. So I just wanted to show you that. Not necessarily even in price order, although I think it got pretty close here. So, the Athearn, not real expensive, but you can if you get them already equipped. Broadway Limited is pricey. They're around $210 when they come out. You're just under $200 for your sound equipped Atlas. You're around $100 for your Bachmann, which aren't bad. I don't know if you can get. I haven't seen any new Intermountain come out in a while, so I'm not sure what's going on with those guys. Kato is obviously your best bet as far as dollar quality is concerned. And then if you want the gold, then you go ScaleTrains. So that's just what I wanted to show you as far as detail goes. Hopefully that answers some of your questions that you had on this stuff. And obviously this varies from model to model, generation to generation, because some of these are some old. This is an old gen, man. This is like I said, this is going back probably, it's more than 10 years. So if it's going back, but you can see the kind of the evolution here in the dollar. So hopefully for some of you that is helpful. All right, let's get back to the review, and that's enough for this 10-minute side tour here. So I don't think there's any secrets here that I really, really, really like ScaleTrains products. I think that they put out some of the best fine scale models out there. So it probably will not come as a surprise to you that I would highly recommend these models be added to your collection as well. And okay, it is another cold, rainy, windy, snowy, crappy weekend here. At least that's what they've got us scheduled for. So there's a good chance there's going to be a lot of operating happening this weekend, and that means you guys are going to see these locomotives again, probably in an operations video coming up here in the next week or so.